What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Offseason. I know me and Ethan have been doing the live streams and we've been putting out the clips, but I had this idea and I also was trying to think of some other ideas of just getting out some content other than just, clips from the streams that we put out. So this was the idea that I came up with. We've been talking about draft prospects for a long time, so I figured I might as well put a top five together and call it my big board for two of the positions of needs for the Spurs. Obviously, you can see today by the title, we're starting with point guard. So I could sit here and talk about all of the people that we've discussed and all that type of stuff, but we're about to jump into that anyway. So once again, this is the SSPN Spurs point guard big board for the upcoming draft, volume one. And I'm just going to do my top five point guards because there's probably only a chance of these five guys getting drafted anyway. Maybe there's a little bit too on the outside. I don't really think so. But with all of that being said, at 4 and 8, I think that this handful of players, we could do like all top 10, but all of those guys aren't even going to be in the Spurs consideration for drafting, if that makes sense. So we're just doing five, and I'm going to rank them after all of these discussions that Ethan and I have had. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this thing. At number 5, I have Rob Dillingham. Yes. For those of you guys who have been watching us throughout the entire draft process, Rob Dillingham started out at number 1 for me. You can see his stats right there, 15 points, about 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 47%, 44% from 3 on the season. And that kind of ties into his strengths overall. An incredible off-the-dribble shooter, really solid shooting splits, even if they're not as efficient as another point guard that was on his team that we'll talk about today. Still very efficient shooting numbers. His ability to shoot in the catch-and-shoot situations, running off screens, and of course, the dynamic ability that he has to put up shots off the dribble are the things that make him so exciting. Even though I have him at number 5 here, that doesn't mean that I'm not happy if the Spurs end up picking him at 8. At the end of the day, the Spurs are probably going to pick one of these 5 guys at 4 or 8, and whichever one they go with, I'm just going to trust the Spurs coaching staff. The Spurs draft and front office staff, I guess is a better way to put it. The coaching staff too. Y'all know what I mean. But even though Rob Dillingham is at number 5, I'm going to repeat myself with some stuff that I've said ad nauseum about Rob Dillingham, but I think it's almost worthy of saying this much because of the mouth-watering potential, if you will, of him and Wemby playing together in the pick and roll, the two-man game offensively. Man, the dynamic ability that he's had at Overtime Elite and in the SEC, if you pair that next to Victor Wembanyama, I don't even have any words, because if y'all have watched Rob Dillingham's tape, you know how electric that would be. You know how hard to guard that would be. And even if like the low end of Rob Dillingham, like his floor ends up being his ceiling, you know what I mean? I know that sounds weird to say, but I think y'all get what I'm saying there. Even if like the projections are the least amount for Rob Dillingham in what his potential can be, the lowest, like a spark plug off the bench. Even in that situation, him in the two-man game with Wemby is going to give defenses problems. I think he does have a really high upside. I think if everything comes together for him, he really could be the next, Tyrese Maxey-like player. Not saying exactly the same. He's obviously a little bit smaller than him, not just in stature, but in muscle as well. But offensively, he could potentially be like the next Tyrese Maxey type player off the dribble, Kentucky guard that can just go get buckets. Shai Gilgeous went to Kentucky as well. There's some other names that I'm forgetting off the top, but there are a lot of successful Kentucky guards. But he's not the only one in this top 10, this top 5 that we have an option with. And that's not leading into necessarily my next selection, but I'm just saying it's not like you just have to pick from one Kentucky guard this draft. So that's why I have him at number 5. But still, he's in my top 5. If the Spurs pick him at 8, despite his defensive deficiencies and his size deficiencies, I'm still going to be very happy with it. And I think that him ending up in San Antonio could maximize his potential and definitely improve his defensive fundamentals. His frame is always going to cause issues on defense, but I think that the flashes that we saw last year at Kentucky, you can go check that out on the SSPN Twitter that I posted a while back. If you go to the media section, if everything translates for him, he could be, maybe a potential all-star one day, even if it's mainly on the offensive end. But yeah, that's why I have Rob Dillingham at number 5. Really, the reason he slid for me from being my favorite player to my least favorite player is because I say number 1 on my point guard big board, not favorite player to least favorite player, because he's definitely still not least. But moving from number 1 to 5 on my personal big board is just defense. As much as you can be in awe of the offensive stuff and think about that with Victor Wembanyama, and the Spurs need bucket getters, they need shooting. They need that dynamic offensive ability aside from just Wemby and Devin. That's not the entirety of the game of basketball. So that's why I got him at number 5. But let's go ahead and move on to the next person we have. I'm going to go and pan out of this one for a second. And we are going to move on to somebody that we just talked about fairly recently in our latest prospect breakdown, and that is Devin Carter, point guard for the Providence Friars. He is 22 years old, so much older than Rob Dillingham. You can see his stats up there, about 20 points per game, 9 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 37.7% from 3, 47% overall from the field with 2 steals and a block. I would still say that I think if everything works out for Rob Dillingham, he's going to have a higher ceiling than Devin Carter. But Devin Carter has a much higher floor than Rob Dillingham. And also, defensively, it's night and day between the two, measurements-wise and on the tape, as well as the numbers you see right here with 3 stocks a game, essentially, for Devin Carter. Now, you may have noticed also, you may remember, and you probably already have gotten it a little bit spoiled if you're an SSPN OG and you're really locked into all of our content. I said I may have him over Nikola Topic. I do not have that anymore, and that's kind of spoiling the next person on my big board here. But I'm going to stick to Devin Carter for a second. Like I said, in comparison to Rob Dillingham, his floor is much higher. The ability to shoot that is still almost similar to Dillingham. Obviously, not the same dynamism off the dribble, but the range. We heard the talk in the combine as well that out of those reports, he was pulling up from 30 feet with ease, hitting them in the same sense that he did at Providence. And he got the majority of the shots at Providence as well. I'd have to go check. I don't know this off the top of my head, how many threes that Rob Dillingham took per game. But I would guess with Kentucky's loaded roster and other three-point shooters like Reed Shepherd and others on the roster, that he probably took less three-pointers than Devin Carter, which makes me wonder, maybe Devin Carter's percentage would be a little bit closer to 44%, like we just saw with old boy Rob Dillingham. Maybe not that close, but, a couple, maybe 40% if he wasn't taking 7 threes a game, which he did this season. So yeah, that's just something I thought about here looking at the percentage after we just looked at Rob's. But regardless, the point I'm trying to say here is Devin Carter, in my opinion, as much as maybe the shot's a little wonky, you could say, I think he's a really solid shooter. I think he's shown with the improvement. You see the percentages from the first 2 years, and that's also with increased volume as well. He's really worked on that, developed that, has an NBA background with his father. His father also has connections to the Spurs, but his athleticism, he put up some of the best athletic numbers in combine history, a 42-inch vertical, some of the fastest shuttle times as well at the combine. As much as he's a little bit older, because he's such a complete player offensively and defensively, on top of all the athleticism numbers with his frame and size as well, that's why I got him over Rob. I just feel like he's a little bit more of a sure thing because the offensive game, as much as the highlights and the off-the-dribble crossover ball handling may not be as good, the scoring's there, the shooting's there. As much as the playmaking, you could say that maybe there's a little bit you'd like to see more from him there if he's going to be a true point guard in the NBA. The difference between him and Rob's assists is like zero point 0.3, I think. So, and I know that obviously Kentucky's a different situation with all of the guards that they have there, and I think that Rob has some playmaking potential. But I also think at the same time that there's not really that big of a gap from them in the playmaking aspect either. So, like I said, apologies if I'm repeating myself. The physical aspect, the offensive aspects, that's not that far of a drop off from Rob, and then the defense as well. That's why I got him at number 4, but he is not at number 3, which is Nikola Topic. I said in the last live that Ethan and I did that I think I have Devin Carter over Nikola Topic. And to be fair, a lot of that had to do with the injury that just happened to Nikola Topic. And I'm about to bring that up here in a second just to give you guys a little bit more details, because Ethan and I, we haven't even really necessarily talked about this too much or dove into it too much. But here is an article here from May 13th of this year when the second injury happened. So Nikola Topic, projected top 5 pick, gets injured again. Topic collapsed on the court after attempting a pass in what seemed like a non-contact injury. But here's the key thing for me, and you can see his stats here. Well, this is his EuroLeague stats specifically. If you go to his overall stats when he played for Mega and just the overall season, not just the EuroLeague, I believe it's about 15 points, 6 assists, and that's honestly all I remember off the top of my head. But I know that those are his full numbers for both of the teams that he played for this season. But getting back to the article. Just a month after getting back from injury, Nikola Topic got injured again. The Cervena, Zavedza, I can't even say that, but they're like Red Star or something is like their team name. Prospect played just 6 minutes in game 1 of the ABA League Finals against, okay, it doesn't really matter who they're playing, the Adriatic League. The projected NBA lottery pick was driving to the basket with about 3:20 left on the clock in the third quarter when he collapsed on the floor after making a pass in what seemed to be a non-contact injury. Topic left the court with help. You can kind of see that right here. But here's the bigger thing. They say 20-year-old. He's 18. That's just an error by them. He suffered a knee injury in January, and that kept him off of the basketball court for 4 months. This injury, as much as it's just a sprain, and it's probably not going to be that serious, that has come out. The MRI did happen. Obviously, this was, at the beginning of May, and we're in June now. It's the same knee. And so that is that's all that's caused Topic to fall on my boards. If it wasn't the same knee, if he wasn't out for 4 months, if it wasn't a month later that the same thing happened, I probably would be a lot higher on him, bluntly. But with that being said, I still have him at number 3, and I have him over Devin Carter, because I think at the end of the day, if this can just be, a little 2 injury thing with this knee, and he can get that right, and he can be at 100% for his career, and everything works out, unquestionably, in my opinion, has a higher ceiling than Devin Carter, and could be a potential all-star. We've talked about the Luka comparisons, and you can see it in his game. It's not the exact same as Luka. I don't think he's ever going to be hitting the step-back jumpers that Luka Doncic hits. I don't think he's ever going to be necessarily the prolific scorer, but he's got a good jumper. He does have a lot of skill and fundamentals, but the vision and the passing at 6'6", that's the stuff that shows shades of Luka. And while there may be some defensive deficiencies, I still don't think it's nowhere near the level of Rob Dillingham, for example, that we mentioned earlier. And because of his frame, and I see good fundamentals. Sometimes he gets beat off the dribble a little bit. His lateral quickness and maybe reaction time, that's the way that I would describe it. It's just someone, watching tape from my computer here. Maybe Nikola himself could school me a little bit if we started talking some ball with all the skills he has. But y'all get where I'm coming from. That would be the things that I would potentially criticize. But I think his fundamental base is solid. And I know you could say this about any prospect, or you could say that I could say this about any prospect, but still, I think regardless of where he goes in the NBA, he's going to improve his defense, and teams are going to work on that, and that's what he's going to work on and focus on. But I think specifically if he does end up in San Antonio, I think That's even just like I said with Rob Dillingham, that is a great place to go to improve your defense. And I think because of his frame and the flashes he has shown, jumping passing lanes and getting blocks and staying in front of guys from time to time, um, at least from what I've seen in the defensive tape. Um, Losing my train of thought here, guys. Sorry about that. What I'm trying to say is that Nikola Topic has a lot of potential, and definitely has, like I said, has a higher ceiling than a guy like Devin Carter. And I think that with his frame, that allows him, this is what I was trying to get to earlier, that allows him to have a higher defensive ceiling than per se, someone who's smaller and has defensive deficiencies. Having the length and the frame that he does, I think that just being in the NBA, and I mean, you never know how these guys are going to work out. I could be totally wrong on this and maybe completely flops. But also, I think that being in an NBA training system, learning that game, and really just going to work on his defense, the frame allows for you to have some hope there, uh, and have some physical tools as well that he can put to use. Once maybe improves that reaction time and lateral quickness, and who knows how much the knee injury has affected that as well. But those are my thoughts on Nikola Topic. Um, obviously in a little bit of a smaller version on this episode here, but that is why I have him number 3. And like I said, the injuries, that's the only, I mean, he might be at 1 or 2, but also both of the guys at 1 or 2 have kind of shot up my boards. And because they've played in the Big East, one won a national championship and another played in the SEC, kind of spoiling it a little bit, I just kind of feel a little bit more for sure about them. As much as we've seen a lot of foreign players come over and make an impact, the Adriatic League, as much as we have seen some EuroLeague highlights from Nikola, but you saw his stats there, they're not the same. Um, it's just, I hold the French league to a higher regard than the Adriatic League. I'm just not sure. I'm not even trying to like crap on it. I just don't know how to measure it in comparison to the NBA. So because I have a better idea of measuring how things are going to translate with the 2 college players I'm about to talk about, that's why I have them over Topic. So let's get into number 2. And just to recap here, if you forgot, we had Rob Dillingham at 5, Devin Carter at 4, and Nikola Topic at number 3. And that moves on to number 2 for my SSPN big board here. And that is none other than Stephon Castle. UConn guard Stephon Castle, my dog. I thought for a second that video was about to play there. I was just pausing that. The stats are not crazy, but if you've watched this channel, you have seen you've seen Lou, excuse me, from Miami Heat Beat. I don't know what I was doing there with my mouth. Pause. Lou from Miami Heat Beat. He has him number 1 on his big board. You can go watch that clip that we posted. I think it's called Stephon Castle's Upside a couple weeks ago. And he thinks the Spurs should sprint to the podium if Stephon Castle is available. But it's not just Lou's opinion that swayed me on Stephon Castle. He had kind of been rising up boards a little bit more for me and Ethan. And especially now with the point guard news, I think, that only allows him to fit even more into the Spurs system. And as Ethan and I have talked about in other episodes, it bodes well for the Spurs size-wise and matchup-wise for some of the other big all-star point guards in the Spurs division, like Luka Doncic, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's some other good guards as well. I mean, Zion takes the ball up the floor a lot. I don't think he would necessarily be guarding him, but still, you've got a CJ McCollum over there. Herb Jones makes some plays from time to time. Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, those are just names of guards with offensive skill sets in our division. I didn't even mention John Morant and Desmond Bane. Right. That position has got killed for the Spurs over the past 2 years defensively. And he would make a ginormous impact, to say the least. His defense is the thing that stands out for him as a prospect. And as Ethan and I have mentioned almost ad nauseum at this point, him at UConn is not necessarily the Stephon Castle that maybe Stephon Castle has shown in the combine or in other workouts. He was playing a role on a national championship team where he was guaranteed nothing, and was playing out of position just to play for UConn to go win a national championship, which he did. Also, Big East Freshman of the Year as well. The 3-point shooting is one thing, that a lot of people have harped on with him. Won the 3-point shooting star drill at the NBA Combine. I think that's a little better than, or I think that's a showing that, maybe his jumper is a little better than what everybody's thinking, just looking at the percentage from this season at UConn. I mean, still, at the same time, going to need some work there. It's not a perfect jump shot. That is something that you can key in on, but it's also like, it's not like it's completely broken and there's no potential for it to improve and be solid, you know? So I think, and even then, it's like the defense, the Spurs just need it so bad, man. And his offensive game inside the arc, his playmaking ability and flashes that he's shown there, orchestrating sets, as well as the combine flashes, like I mentioned earlier. That's why I have him at number 2. And the shooting is the reason that I have him at number 2. That is something that you can pick at, and that's why I think that there's a more complete all-around player that maybe doesn't have the same frame as Stephon, but I think is a little bit more of an all-around sure thing than Stephon. So let's just go ahead and move to that. Number 2 is none other than Reed Sheppard, or excuse me, number 1 is no other than Reed Sheppard from Kentucky. Me and Ethan were talking about this in the last live. He said he would still pick Castle over Sheppard. I said after that, I was like, I'd actually have Sheppard over Castle. And the reason I have that is kind of like I said in that episode. The only thing personally that I give to Stephon Castle over Reed Sheppard is his frame. With that being said, if some things can be honed, if Stephon's able to, one day become a 40% 3-point shooter, then he's probably going to have a higher ceiling than Reed Sheppard. I'll be real. Even if everything pans out for Reed Sheppard, and I really like Reed Sheppard, I think he can be a really solid player. I think there's a reason that he's getting number 1 pick consideration. The statistical percentages for him are just ridiculous. I read that in the last episode. You can go check out that live, but we'll read the ones that are right in front of us here. 53.6% from the field, 52.1% from 3. If you've watched this channel, I have completely flip-flopped on Reed Sheppard. I mean, him and Rob Dillingham have probably switched places over time as Ethan and I have continued to dive into these prospects and look more and more at them since the season's end, really since the end of April. So about a month here, really midway through April when the Spurs season ended. So about a month and a half here now. In the first 2 weeks, I was like, I'm not sure if Reed Sheppard's going to translate. I'm not sure if he's going to, if his athleticism or lack thereof, I thought, might be taken advantage of. He'll get bullied, pushed around. He won't be able to make the same passes, blah, blah, blah. What did the combine measurements say? And what did the tape in Kentucky say? As much as the NBA is a different level than the SEC, there are a lot of physical specimens, other NBA players in the SEC. 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Doing whatever he can for his team to get the job done. Was able to play some combo guard, played the 2, also played the 1, brought the ball up the floor. I believe was second in assist rate at Kentucky behind Rob Dillingham, but still led the team in assists, I believe. A block per game, I didn't even mention this, 2.5 steals per game. So that is essentially right there almost 4 stocks per game. Almost. Keyword, almost. But still, the shooting percentages, the defense, and I mean the blocked jump shots that I've seen, as well as you can see 2.5 steals per game while only fouling twice a game. Fundamentals, a family history, shooting ability, great defense. It's almost like his floor is going to be Derek White. So as much as, we in the Devin Carter breakdown, to go back down to number 4 here, his ceiling, potentially could be Derek White. I feel like Reed Shepherd's floor is Derek White. And I think in this draft, that's another reason why he's got number 1 pick consideration. And I haven't even mentioned the 42-inch vertical at the combine, as well as the other impressive athletic numbers that he mentioned and showed. So, I mean, there's not a lot of holes to find about Reed Shepherd, other than you can say the NBA game is going to be an adjustment for him. But at the end of the day, he's going to be a solid defender, a good passer, and a great shooter. And I think he is someone who can kind of, when I say create his own offense, he can do some off the dribble stuff, but he can create for like a team's offense. If you put him in a pick and roll, he can, maneuver his way through traffic and maybe draw two, and then make a bounce pass through somebody's legs to lead to a wide open layup under the basket. That's the type of stuff that he does. He can draw attention. He can lure defenses to create shots for his teammates, on top of his own super efficient shot making ability. I think he's going to go at number 3, regardless of whether if the Rockets trade or keep their pick. But if he somehow falls to number 4, as much as our boy Lou said sprint to the podium for Stephon, I'm kind of like sprint to the podium for Reed. I'd also sprint to the podium for Stephon. But if he falls to number 4, it's like I'm sitting in the war room for like 3 seconds. I'm like, Reed Shepherd, let's go. And then we'll address, whether it's Salon or whatever, we'll address the wing position at number 8. But if this guy falls to 4, this is who I'm rolling with. I kind of just mentioned it. It's hard to find holes in his game. Not to repeat myself, but it's like his floor is Derek White. And I think that his ceiling could be higher than that, which means he could potentially be an all-star one day. I know a lot of it is, you could say beforehand was fundamentals, but when you have the combine measurements and numbers showing off the athleticism that he has, I mean, it kind of explained why he's able to like jump from the elbow to almost the 3-point line and swat jump shots in midair. Maybe because he has a 42-inch vertical, even if he doesn't believe it. I don't know if y'all saw that, but he couldn't believe it when they said it was 42 at the combine. But yeah, I could sit here and continue to ramble on, but we're almost at about 30 minutes here. I think y'all get the point. So just to recap, once again, at number 5, we have Rob Dillingham. And I say we. This is my big board. Ethan has a different one. But at number 5, Rob Dillingham. Number 4, Devin Carter. Number 3, Nikola Topic. Number 2, Stephon Castle. And number 1, Reed Shepherd. I appreciate y'all watching for real. Thank y'all for checking out the channel. All of the support lately. It's been greatly appreciated, and it means a lot to me and Ethan. So if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Be sure to follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on my T, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. And while you still have a chance, if you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out this QR code. Check out our merch. The link is in the description as well as the channel description, sspn.myspreadshop.com. We got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, all that good stuff. We appreciate y'all. And, I clicked the wrong button there. We appreciate y'all, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Go Spurs, go.